We're just going to wait until more of you file into the chat. Make sure you definitely drop all of your questions into the chat, and we will answer as many as we can possibly fit into the next hour or so that we are on here. But Alex, before we start answering questions, and please ask your questions again, YouTube audience, wherever you're at, just drop them in, and we're going to get to as many as we can. I did want to talk about what I said yesterday on our YouTube channel about Cam Newton and just sort of clarify, but also discuss some things. And I think the biggest thing for me with Cam right now in the Patriots is that the asking price in the veteran quarterback market is astronomically high, right? And the Patriots are not going to bite on a Carson Wentz trade. They're not going to give up the assets for a Deshaun Watson or even a Derek Carr, who may or may not be available. But point being, they're astronomical asking prices. That's not going to happen. So with that, coupled with the fact that in the free agent market, I don't think right now that the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world are making a whole lot of difference for the Patriots than just re-signing Cam to them internally. So ultimately what I'm saying is they might be stuck with another year of Cam, somebody in the draft that they can develop alongside of Cam and go from there, because the market right now is just not really lining up for them to have a significant upgrade.
Yeah, but and I'm going to go back. I've been harping on this point, and I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, but I'm going to say it again. Mike Reese, Tom Curran, the guys who don't get things wrong. Okay. These aren't, people like me just spewing hot takes. The guys who don't get things wrong.
Sure.
They are all saying that the Patriots are going to be overly and uncharacteristically aggressive this offseason. I just don't know how Cam Newton and Kellen Mond, if that's what you walk away with, is overly and uncharacteristically aggressive. That
the big thing
screams status quo to me.
Right, and it is, and that's a very good point. But I think the issue is that it takes two to tango, right? Like, you can sit there and say, and you can leak through your media guys that you're going to be overly aggressive, but if the trade isn't there, or if the signing isn't there in free agency, then it's all well and good to say that. But do you really have the tools to be able to go ahead and do something like that?
Overly aggressive to me means they are going into this offseason and they have guys, either individual guys or positions circled where they're not going to be outbid. That's what that means to me, is you're going into the offseason and player A, player A is becoming available, and you won't let anybody offer more, whether it be in money in free agency or in a trade. You won't let anybody offer more than you. There is no price that is too high, whether that is, and I'm not saying they should do this, but whether that's trading for a Carson Wentz, whether that's trading for a Derek Carr, maybe it's that, whether it's Dak Prescott hitting free agency. And the reports are kind of, again, I've been a broken record on this, but we're starting to see the reports out of Dallas that that's not a sure thing. And look, they gave up a second rounder for Matthew Stafford, so that doesn't help the argument. But it doesn't mean that they have to be overly aggressive on everybody. It just means that if they believe that Carson Wentz is the guy, and I'm not saying they do, I don't think they do. I think the report right now is they don't. But I'm using him as an example. If they believe Carson Wentz is the guy, then there is no price asking price too high to trade for Carson Wentz. They won't be outbid. That's what that means in the context of the reports of overly aggressive. If Dak Prescott is the guy, then the 15th pick, if it comes to a trade, the 15th pick is on the table. Stephon Gilmore is on the table. Future firsts are on the table. If he becomes a free agent, it's a blank check. 30 a year, 35 million a year, 38 million a year, whatever it is. So yes, in past seasons without this kind of acknowledgement, yeah, Cam Newton and Kellen Mond, or Cam Newton and Sam Ehlinger, or even Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham, that's the status quo. But everything we're hearing is they're not going to go back to the status quo. So if it is Cam and a day 3 draft pick, that's going to be a disappointment. That's going to be a letdown. That's absolutely the reality of it. I'm not saying it won't happen. Absolutely. I'm just saying it's a letdown.
Yeah, and I think the Dak Prescott thing is interesting because, look, I try not to operate in these dream scenarios. Dak Prescott's a dream scenario.
It's getting there that it's not.
Right, because
that's what I'm telling you and what I've been telling you. He's not in the class of Aaron Rodgers,
Deshaun, Russell Wilson.
Right. Deshaun Watson. Those are the dream scenarios. I'm not saying Dak Prescott is likely, but there's some sort of area in between those two. And that's where he exists right now. But it's trending more, at least him becoming available. Not so much him to the Patriots, but him becoming available is trending more towards the likely side than the dream side.
Well, and I think that there is a disconnect. There clearly is a disconnect between what the Cowboys front office and Jerry Jones want to offer Dak Prescott and what Dak Prescott is currently looking for, because if there wasn't, this deal would have been done a long time ago, right? These sides are clearly at an impasse here with the contract negotiations. Now, the difference is that they are not going to let Dak Prescott hit unrestricted free agency and just take the third round comp pick back next year and call it a day and wipe their hands clean of Dak Prescott.
Right. It probably has to be a trade.
They're probably going to have to tag him and then trade him on the tag, which is still doable for a team like the Patriots that want to acquire him. But we're not going to get into a situation where you're just going to be able to sign Dak Prescott like the Buccaneers signed Tom Brady last offseason, right? It's going to have to come via trade. I think the biggest thing is that I keep on coming back to, though, is that my point with Cam is that there is a line, right? Dak Prescott's clearly above that line that you go all out to get that player if he becomes available. But there is a line of, where are we improving all that much? Does Ryan Fitzpatrick really move the needle? Now, maybe it might be more entertaining. Maybe some Patriots fans are just done with Cam Newton and they would just prefer to kind of hitch their wagon to Ryan Fitzpatrick, so to speak, instead of having to watch Cam again for another year. But does it really change the bottom line all that much for the Patriots? And I think that that's a question that they're asking now, is that Cam versus Fitzpatrick versus Jacoby Brissett versus Tyrod Taylor, those guys of the world. I don't know if it makes sense to go a different route and rebuild the bridge when you already have a bridge that's halfway built. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but here's what I would say to that. I don't think anybody's rooting. Maybe there are some people rooting for just Ryan Fitzpatrick, but so I'm in this camp where I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's a fit. I'm doing that under the assumption that they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round and that he'd be a good teacher. And you're talking short term, Ryan Fitzpatrick being the starter is in like half a season max. I'm in the same boat with Tyrod Taylor. I'm in the same boat with Alex Smith. Like most of those guys you just named. The thing that makes Cam different, and the reason I can't put Cam in that group, and look, I think Cam would be a fantastic teacher. Okay. We know if there's one thing we know the guy can do and still do and has always been able to do, it's command a locker room and be a leader and get people to rally behind him. I would love for the Patriots long-term quarterback to learn how to do that from Cam Newton.
Yeah.
The reason I can't square it and look at him like I look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, for instance, or look at him like I look at Tyrod Taylor is we had that whole scenario last year where it made all the sense in the world to bench Cam Newton. And the Patriots didn't do it. And maybe that had something to do with Jarrett Stidham too.
I think it had a lot to do with Jarrett Stidham.
But you reached a point where you just needed to bench Cam. You needed that shakeup, regardless of what Stidham was going to do. You needed to send that jolt to the rest of the roster. Sure. So if the Patriots, if the plan is to bring back Cam Newton and draft Mac Jones and move up and take Trey Lance, and those seem to be I'm just going to say the other guys maybe, but I don't think they're realistic anymore. I think it's Jones and Lance, and that's it. If that's the plan, okay, but are we going to have to go through this same circus where Bill Belichick won't bench Cam Newton?
Right.
When you have Trey Lance or Mac Jones sitting there on the bench and it's week 8 and Cam's thrown 1 touchdown and 7 picks, is there going to be a refusal to bench him? Because at that point, you're wasting that first round pick. You're screwing with that guy's development and you're right back where you were last year. That's why I can't buy in on Cam. It's not necessarily, it's more of a Belichick thing, honestly, than a Cam thing. Because the information I have, and maybe it changes, maybe it does, and I'm not closing the door on that, but the information we have right now is that Bill Belichick won't bench Cam Newton. No matter how bad things get, that's a non-option. And I don't want to deal with that. If I have a first-round pick waiting to develop, that he's going to have to sit there and watch Cam struggle to throw the football. That's not fair to him. That's not right for his development. It's obviously less watchable. So unless there's a clear, unless they make it clear with Cam and they make it, and by the way, the other coaches make it clear with Bill that Cam Newton is not untouchable as the starter, then I can't get behind it.
Yeah. I can understand all of that. And I agree that there is a degree as well of how long is the leash who's behind him on the depth chart. What's the plan from a quarterback room perspective, not just the starter, but the whole entire room next year and the whole depth chart. If they have multiple guys that maybe could do that, like let's say, I think a scenario that could work out for them is they draft a guy and maybe they bring back Cam and Jacoby Brissett, right? And they pay both of those guys small free agent deals to come back. And then at least you have 3, maybe even 4, if you want to throw Jared Stidham's name in that hat as well, of guys that have starting caliber upside. I'm not saying that they're all starters right now in the league, but starting caliber upside, where if you do get into an open competition, or if you do get into a situation 4 weeks into the season where Cam has been terrible and you want to, find a different flavor and you want to try to put somebody else in there, you have some options. You're certainly not bringing Cam back and saying he's the starter and we're not doing anything else, right?
This is what I'm telling you.
Do other things.
But this is what I'm telling you, and I don't disagree with anything you just said, and I like the idea of an open competition. No matter what happens, it should be an open competition, even if it is Fitzpatrick and Mac Jones, or Fitzpatrick and Trey Lance. That rookie, it won't happen, but that rookie should have a chance to win the job week 1. What I am telling you is this, and you just said there needs to be an understanding it's an open competition.
Yeah.
What have you seen that makes you believe that if Cam struggles, Bill will bench him? What has changed?
Nothing other than the fact that they've already been there for a year, and maybe this time Cam.
But they were there for 3 months. We did this. They were there for 3 months, and it was like, oh, well, he's seen it. It has to change in December. Oh, they have no more shot at the playoffs. Once he wasn't benched after they were eliminated for the playoffs, I don't trust Bill Belichick to bench him. I don't, until I see otherwise. I'm not saying he won't, but I just can't. I can't get behind that. I can't get behind the thought he would do it, because everything is seen tells me that he's unbenchable in Belichick's eyes.
Yeah, that's fair, and it's a tough one to sell. I'm not sitting here trying to sell anybody on it. I'm more trying to prepare people for the reality that could happen. And I think that we sit here and we're going to answer a bunch of questions now, and I'm going to get to some of these questions, I promise, about quarterbacks. And we're going to talk about Marcus Mariota, and we're going to talk about Fitzpatrick, and we're going to talk about Jameis Winston, and we're going to talk about all of these guys. And it's only fair to tell the whole story. It's only fair to put Cam in that same hat as well. We have to talk about it as a possibility. So that's the only way I'm going. I'm not trying to sit here and say I think it's this great idea to bring Cam Newton back, but we do have to acknowledge the fact that he is a very real possibility if we're going to sit here and our first question here talk about Jameis Winston. We haven't really discussed Jameis Winston all that much. That's why I wanted to start with him. Is this anything that you would entertain, Alex? I don't know, because Jameis is in Bruce Arians' offense. He threw 30 interceptions, right? And that's an air it out. It's not a QB friendly offense. It's a difficult one to run. It's a lot of one-on-one matchups down the field and making you read and making your throw in the right place. Really good for Tom Brady, right? But not necessarily for a guy like Jameis. Does that excite you at all? Maybe no. A little, former number 1 overall pick, right? You could maybe tap into that potential.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, because like you just mentioned, the Bucs offense is challenging, and he threw 30 interceptions. He also only threw 30 touchdowns. And I know that sounds like a sexy number, but in that offense, it's not. It really isn't. And if he can't master that one, and it's tough, I think the Patriots offense is probably tougher. I do. And Jameis's best attribute is his big arm. And if the Patriots want to use the short and intermediate middle of the field, I mean, if you're bringing Jameis Winston and you're grasping at straws at this point. Like I would almost rather, and I just went on that whole rant about Cam. Yeah, I think I'd rather have Cam than Jameis Winston, just because at least what Cam can do now sort of makes sense in the context of what the Patriots want to do. Like hypothetically, if he gets back on track, I think Jameis is, and look, I'm not saying I wouldn't sign him if I'm any NFL team. I do think that he's a guy that deserves a second chance, kind of like basically the role he had in New Orleans. I just, in the context of the Patriots, to me, you're putting a square peg in a round hole with Jameis Winston. I don't see it.
I agree with that as very much, is that Jameis Winston, his good plays, if I went and cut up 10 of Jameis Winston's best throws from his time in Tampa Bay, it's broken down plays where he escapes the pocket somehow and he chugs off a rusher and he goes and he throws a bomb down the field and Mike Evans is down there and just kind of out jumps the coverage. And those are the types of plays that you see Jameis make. You don't see the consistent read the field, get the ball out, process things quickly, throw accurately on time with anticipation and the proper touch, and all those little things that we talk about from why you and I both really like Mac Jones for them, for instance, right?
Right.
Those little types of quarterback things, Jameis just has never really done that, not even back to Florida State. I would say that he's always been kind of a gunslinger, throw it down the field, create outside the pocket, playmaker, right? Which is enticing, and it's why he went number 1 overall, along with the intangibles and some of the leadership stuff. But ultimately, not exactly a good fit. I if you're going to go from that draft, I would much rather Marcus Mariota than Jameis Winston at that point.
And for what it's worth, like, not necessarily directly relevant to the Patriots, but all indications are the Saints really liked him. He does seem like a much better fit for that offense. I can't imagine New Orleans lets him get away. I don't think so. And then on top of that, what Taysom Hill showed, I think he's New Orleans week 1 starter next year. I really do. So I think they're going to pay him more than the Patriots or anybody else realistically should.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked a lot about Jimmy G. That's not how you spell Garoppolo, but it's okay. We'll let it go. I do want to discuss Jimmy G quickly, though, because I do want to mention that I feel pretty good about this, that the Patriots, given Jimmy G's current contract situation, are not going to trade much for Jimmy Garoppolo in a deal. I think anything on day 1 or day 2 type picks, second, third rounders, I think that's out of the question for Jimmy Garoppolo, given how much they're also going to have to pay him. If the Niners are selling Jimmy Garoppolo and they can flip a 5th round pick to the 49ers because the 49ers are either going to cut Jimmy or trade him for whatever they can get for him, that's a different story. If Jimmy G gets cut, or if we're in a situation where they're just trying to get rid of him at any cost, then I think that they would entertain it. But if they're going to have to give up any sort of usable asset, a top 100 pick, whatever you want to call it, I think that they're out on Jimmy G still too.
I'll say it again. If it comes down to Garoppolo or Brissett, let's say they're both free agents, because I'm not giving up anything for Garoppolo, like you just said, unless it's minimal, unless it's conditional day 3 picks. If it comes down to Garoppolo and Brissett, give me Brissett. Because I don't think the talent gap, look, Garoppolo is better. I don't think the talent gap is as big as everybody thinks it is. And on top of that, I'm going to get 16 games at Jacoby Brissett. I'm going to get 5 out of Jimmy Garoppolo. He's played 16 games once in his career. I don't think he's hit 10 above that. Even going back, they needed him to start 4 games in 2016. That's all they needed, 4 games. He got through 1.5.
Yeah.
So the hell out of here. Again, I went on that rant at the beginning of the show about Cam. I went on that rant at the beginning of the show about Cam. Give me Cam over Garoppolo. There's very few quarterbacks you'll get me to pick Garoppolo if we put them head to head. There's very few.
That's half Miami, though, got Patriots a 2nd round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like that's definitely, if you look back on that,
they fleeced San Francisco in that trade. So,
and then San Francisco turned around and paid Jimmy just because he was serviceable in the 5 or 6 games that he started at the end of that season, and they got duped. You know, they got duped into paying him, and now they're in the situation that they're in, where it's a tough deal to get out of. It's not a very tradable contract either. I don't think anybody's really going to be knocking down the door to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, especially if you can trade for Derek Carr, who is making less money than Jimmy Garoppolo and is a better quarterback and a more durable quarterback. I don't see that one happening. A couple more quarterback questions here that people are asking in the chat. Mitchell Trubisky.
Nope.
Yeah, I think I'm a no on that one too. Although, based off of how Cam threw the ball last year, is Mitchell Trubisky in this iteration of Cam Newton? Certainly not 2015 Cam.
Sure. Yes.
2020 Cam. Is Mitchell Trubisky just a younger 2020 Cam Newton?
I talked about this on Tuesday with all these guys: Trubisky, Carr, Wentz. You're looking at these guys in terms of their ceiling, right? But football is a what have you done for me lately sport.
Sure.
At this point, all the evidence is there that they're not good. The only box left to check before you totally write them off is a change of scenery. And do you want to bank your future on a change of scenery helping a guy? So, again, if that's what you're going with, if you're going with the quarterbacks drafted in the last 3 to 8 years in the first round who've become washouts, because that's kind of the group we're talking about here. If that's the group you want the Patriots to approach, you should want Wentz. Because at that point, you're talking about raw upside and nothing else. And we know Wentz's raw upside is an MVP because we saw him do it in 2017. We've never seen Trubisky come close to that. We've never seen Carr come close to that. Mariota probably came the closest, but I still think he was a step or two away.
I'll argue with you a little bit with Carr, though. He was top 5 in MVP voting.
You know what? You're right. He had that one good year before he broke his ankle. No, you're right. But again, if this is the group you're talking about, you want Wentz because you are talking about raw upside. Don't come at me talking about floor with Trubisky or floor with Carr or floor with Mariota because the floor is 7 or 9 and 6 and 10 again.
And the Bears are aggressively looking to upgrade on Mitchell Trubisky, so that his own team is telling you that they know they made the wrong pick.
Right. What does that tell you?
The guy, right? That tells you a whole lot. They did fix some of his issues towards the end of last year. They ran a lot more of that Shanahan-McVay style bootleg play action, rolling him out of the pocket, letting him throw on the run, which is what he did at North Carolina in college that he was really successful with. That's sort of what makes could make him good, but again,
the Patriots don't run that.
The Patriots don't run it. I wish they did. They do not, and they don't do it a lot yet. At least, I mean, maybe they go there eventually. But yeah, I think we're both a pretty hard.
But is Mac Jones? So if you have to change, not Mac Jones.
That was my next question.
No, I was going to shout them out. No, one more point on Trubisky. I just said that because I saw it in the chat. I wanted to shout them out.
Yeah.
So if you get Trubisky, you have to rework your entire offense. I actually think the Patriots should kind of go over a major offensive overhaul.
Yeah.
But is Mitchell Trubisky the guy you want to do that around? Is Mitchell Trubisky the guy you look at and that's the guy we're going to change our entire identity for? No, he's not.
Yeah. Okay. So let's answer this Mac Jones question. Both of us have already kind of pounded the table at different times in various ways for Mac Jones.
I had for the record.
You were first.
I have since October.
You were first.
You caught on.
Yes, I caught on. What game was it that I caught on? Maybe
the Natty. It was the Natty.
It was, yeah. I mean, that one was the one that put it over the top. I think I was already kind of in the category of, okay, this guy's intriguing in that Florida-Alabama SEC championship game, which was like, if you go back and watch that game, that's like the game that I'm going to end up watching 10 times because of all the draft prospects that are in that one game.
I mean, it was a really good game too. So at least, you got that.
That was in a lot of ways because Florida benched all their guys besides Kyle Trask in their bowl game. So that was a really important game from the draft perspective. But we both like Mac Jones and we both like his outlook long-term. But is he a guy that you would feel comfortable with starting year one, day one, wherever you want to kind of put that marker? Let's ask year one because that's what the question is.
Okay. Here. So year one, week 1, no. Year 1, week 8, week 10. Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that because by all accounts, he's a very fast learner, and that's huge. So I am under the belief that quarterbacks should sit. I always thought a year. Maybe it's not a year, but I do think there's a ramp-up period, and you risk throwing a guy out there too early and damaging his confidence, and then that's it. Because that you can't get back. So, I like more so the Aaron Rodgers model, the Patrick Mahomes model. Justin Herbert kind of swayed me that it can be done in less than a season, but is Mac Jones an upgrade year one? You upgrade your overall quarterback outlook because you have a potential long-term option. I don't know if he's an upgrade week 1, but him playing year 1, week 8, I think would be good. And there was one other question here relating to Mac Jones. I don't know if you can find it, Evan, comparing him to AJ McCarron. Oh. And I really want to touch on that because I see this a lot. And the thing you need to know about that, because I see fans do this all the time. And as somebody who's watched a ton of Alabama football, I understand why that comparison happens. I absolutely do.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Alabama was one of the last teams to run like the old school college football offense where you ran the ball 40 times a game and, you were in 21, 12 personnel, whatever, most of the time, like all of that. That's what they were doing when they had AJ McCarron.
Sure.
They changed that system 2 or 3 years ago. Basically, Nick Saban kind of saw what was happening elsewhere in the SEC and said, this isn't an old school college football conference anymore. We need to upgrade. And that's when they go out and they get the guys like the Jalen Waddles and the Devonta Smiths. And they turned it to more of a spread offense. So yes, both had incredible talent. Absolutely. And Jones might have been better than McCarron's, frankly. But it's a different offense. It's the offense AJ McCarron ran asked almost nothing of the quarterback. It was get a clean handoff, make the read at the line, adjust the blocking assignments for the run game, make a clean handoff, and like 4 or 5 times a game, you would have to make a decently hard throw. Nothing overly challenging, but decently hard. There were no reads. It was all single read, whatever. Mac Jones is running a modern college spread offense. There's a lot more going on in his brain during the play. So that is the difference between them. And that's why Mac Jones is a lot more encouraging than a guy like AJ McCarron was. I just wanted to get that off my chest because I saw the question. No, it's a very good question.
I feel like Mac Jones is the guy we should be comparing Mac Jones to is Tua, not AJ McCarron. Because Tua,
Tua's issue was he has the size that Tua didn't.
Right,
and he's not going to have the injury issues.
And I think he's a little bit more durable than Tua. But I think the biggest thing with Mac Jones is you mentioned the style of offense that they've kind of shifted to. Alabama's also actually running more RPOs than just about any other team in college football nowadays.
Even that's new too. Yep.
Yeah, even without a mobile quarterback, they're doing what are really run pass options in terms of the quarterback throwing it or handing it off versus actually trying to hold a defender with the quarterback's legs. But ultimately, I think what you see with Mac Jones is somebody that I think can be ready to start almost right away because I'm not concerned about the mental aspect of the game for him. I think he can see the game really well. I think the game slows down for him in key situations. I think he processes things very, very quickly. I think he's been running, like you said, in a very pro-style spread type of offense that has multiple reads for the quarterback, coverage and full field progression reads. And I don't have any concerns whatsoever that Mac Jones by a month into the playbook is going to be able to handle that mentally. All of the Mac Jones concerns are physical, right? It's how good of an arm does he really have? He's not mobile. So can he develop that Tom Brady sixth sense move in the pocket type of style?
I'll add to that. And he is very good in the pocket because somebody's saying mentioned the mobility and that's not what the NFL is going towards.
Right.
Is Justin Herbert mobile? Like not really.
Herbert's more mobile than Mac Jones.
But is he I wouldn't put him in the category of what the NFL is going towards either, right? Neither is really Joe Burrow. Like they're mobile enough. Mac is less, but I don't think you don't need Patrick Mahomes to win games.
No,
The quarterback who just won the Super Bowl is a statue, and I get he had a ton of talent around him, and it's kind of a unicorn. But a quarterback who can move is nice. I don't think it's necessary.
No,
if you have the right pieces.
I also think that it's really important for Mac Jones's development, how he handles pressure and how he's able to move around inside his limitations. The one thing that Tom Brady became so good at was moving very, very suddenly in tight spaces, right? Not necessarily being able to run and extend with his legs, but being able to move around in that 6x6 box in the pocket and elude rushers and make space for himself and find pockets of space inside the pocket. And if you can become that kind of quarterback, then you can still be really successful in this league from inside the pocket. So I don't have a ton of concerns about his mobility, his arm strength, and even him throwing open receivers, really talented receivers. That might take in a little bit more of an adjustment period than anything else. But that's why I'm actually pretty confident that you could play him right away because I don't think that it's a mental. I don't think it's any game speed, anything like that. I think it's all going to be determined. His career is going to be determined on whether or not he has the physical talent and the physical gifts to shine in the NFL and to separate himself in the NFL, not necessarily if he's going to be able to handle the playbook as a rookie or handle the pressure as a rookie. He's dealt with all of that kind of stuff. We haven't really talked about Gardner Minshew either, and for good reason, because I'm not a big Gardner Minshew guy, and sometimes we sort of point our shows towards what I like and don't like, I will admit, but Gardner Minshew is available. He's available. You can get him. The Jaguars are obviously going to draft Trevor Lawrence. He's not going to be the guy there. Any love whatsoever for Minshew Mania?
I mean, I love Gardner Minshew in that I love watching him play. Yeah. I love Washington State quarterbacks. Go Cougs. I just don't know, talent-wise, he's one of those bridge guys, but he doesn't have the NFL experience. I think in 10 years, he's going to be what Ryan Fitzpatrick is now. He's going to be a guy who bounces around the league. He's a spot starter. He kind of develops this cult following, right? I think that's what he becomes. I think he's a good bridge starter, but the problem is he's 25, 26, something like that. He might be 27. Yeah. I'm not bringing a 27-year-old to teach my 24-year-old quarterback, right? Yeah, it's like having a 10-year-old babysit a 9-year-old.
Sure.
So I like the idea. I'm not he's not good enough to be the guy. He's not good enough where, he's like Mariota or Wentz or Carr, where there's that upside that, maybe you get a guy who can be the quarterback here for 5 years, 6 years. He's not that guy. And he doesn't have the experience to he's 24. Okay. So there you go. He's like same age as Mac Jones.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't have the experience to be that guy who can be a teacher and like, this is how the NFL works. So this is how you have to operate. Like, he's not quite there either. He's kind of awkwardly in between. So I love Gardner Minshew. I would love to root for him on the Patriots just because he's a guy I like, and it would be cool for him to be the quarterback of my team.
Yeah.
But does he make any sense for the Patriots' current situation? Absolutely not. The only way is if it's like you mentioned, if you go with that, 3-pronged attack. You mentioned Cam, Brissett, and Jones.
Right.
Like maybe if you want to go at Derek Carr, or if you want to go Mariota and then like Kellen Mond, maybe he makes sense as a third option. But I'm not, he's not a fit for what the Patriots need right now. They either need experience or they need upside. And he's just kind of a safe, young, high floor guy. And that's not really what I'm looking for.
I don't think Gardner Minshew is a fit here. Gardner Minshew everybody fell in love with Minshew mania because he's like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type, right? He's a wild man out there.
Right.
He's going to make some ridiculous throws. He's going to do some ridiculous things. He's going to get everybody's attention with some highlight reel plays, but the consistency, the ball security, the consistent, efficient down-to-down play is never going to be good enough for him to string together successful play and win football games, right? And that's the difference between good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks. Is the bad ones, yeah, they can flash. Every NFL quarterback that starts games in the league flashes, right? We can make a whole highlight reel of Cam Newton last year of him making good throws down the field, believe it or not. They all have their flashes, but this is exactly what we saw last year with Cam. It's the consistent down-to-down play. Can you do it for 40 snaps a game for 16 weeks plus the playoffs? Can you be that guy? And that's not anything I don't think that Gardner Minshew has shown us that he is capable of or should be doing as a starter for the Patriots by any means. All right. I like this question because we don't talk about Stidham. Nobody talks about Stidham. Nobody acts like Stidham is any sort of real option here. Stidham is back on the practice field. He's with Jordan Palmer in California, throwing the football around and getting his offseason program going. He is still on the roster, right? I mean, he's still here. I think that the reason why we're all so soured on Stidham is that if he was any good, they would have made that move last year and not started Cam Newton all those games, especially towards the end of the year. But is he hopeless? Is that ship sailed? Are we completely giving up on Jarrett Stidham?
Yeah, I think, could he bounce around the NFL as a backup? Sure. Right. He has enough natural ability to do that. The XFL is starting up again in 2022. Like maybe we see him there. I think that's realistic. But again, they had every reason last year to give him the job.
Right.
And he couldn't grab it. And maybe Bill was refusing to bench Cam or whatever, but they saw him more than we did, and they didn't feel like he was a better option than a guy who couldn't throw the ball 15 yards. So, And I know people will say we never got to see him with the full week and the throw to Gunner and this and that. Like, no, I've seen enough. We've realistically seen enough. Like, it is what it is. If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So I feel for the guy. I think he tried hard, but you got to be the thing people don't get about this conversation, because there's so many names out there right now and everybody wants to talk about them. Yeah. Is that, there's a bunch of names available who are quarterbacks, so they can get a quarterback. I'm going to ask you, Evan, how many quarterbacks last year were like unquestionable? This guy is good. He can be a starter for multiple years quarterbacks. Like, how many in the league would you say they were? You don't have to like go name to name. Just give me an estimate.
16.
60, I think that's a good number. I would say, between the 12 and 15 range, I'll give you 16.
Yeah.
So think about it this way. There are 16 people on the entire planet who are good enough to play quarterback at the NFL level.
Yeah.
There's more teams than quarterbacks on the planet.
That's why
this isn't a new argument. People have made this argument with goalies too. but there are 16 people on the entire planet who are good enough to play NFL quarterback and able to. There might be guys, LeBron probably could, but he chose to play basketball. Trevor Lawrence can, but he wasn't eligible. So the number fluctuates year to year, but 16 on the entire planet who can play quarterback. The odds that this guy, who has by all accounts struggled at every step, is suddenly going to flip the switch. What's the world population? It's like 3 trillion, right?
Yeah.
Is he 1 in 16 out of 3 trillion based on what we've seen? I don't see it.
Yeah.
The odds don't support it. It's not worth selling out for. If you want to keep him around for the rest of his contract and maybe he can work through what the issue is, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But, well, there is if you draft Kellen Mond, because you're being redundant at that point. You're wasting a roster spot. But, like, I'm not giving him the keys week 1. He hasn't shown me he can do that.
I also think that, there was a lot of stories that came out about Jared Stidham's work ethic when he was in high school, and then when he transferred from Baylor, he went back to his high school and was working out practicing with the varsity team from his high school to stay sharp because he was in his transfer year, all this type of work ethic stuff. From everything that I have heard, a lot of that work ethic stuff went out the door when he got drafted by the Patriots, and they didn't really see that intensity, that snarl, that desire, that fire to want to go out there and take the job, because last year in training camp, he had that opportunity. He point blank had the opportunity to beat Cam Newton out for that job. And I think that there were people in the building that wanted him to go out there and beat Cam Newton out for the job. And he just didn't do it. And in a lot of ways, Cam was okay in camp, but in a lot of ways, Cam just kind of stumbled into that job because Jared Stidham wouldn't take the bull by the horns. And until he shows me that he's going to have that type of fire and that type of competitiveness where he's going out there and he's showing play to play, this is my job. This is my show. I just can't buy it because the tape, even from his rookie preseason, is a lot more inconsistent than people want to believe. I think a lot of people remember that Lions game. He looked really good in that game. That very first preseason game against Detroit was a good one. Go watch the other 3 that they played. It was up and down at best. And I think that's putting it politely. A lot of plays that could have been turnovers that weren't turnovers, dropped interceptions. There were actual interceptions and fumbles, sacks taken in the pocket. He had something like 11 sacks taken in that preseason. Really spotty tape preseason that I think a lot of people, we can isolate individual throws and say, oh, that was a really good throw. He threw a couple of touchdown passes against Tennessee that were well-placed balls on go routes and things like that. It wasn't there as much as people wanted it to be. And I think we tried to create this thing out of Jared Stidham that I don't think ever really existed. It didn't exist at Auburn. It didn't exist when he came to here in camp. And I think a lot of people are continuing to hold on to that. And he never truly was good at any level of football that he's really played at.
Why do people think I'm asleep? This is a niche.
I also think people are confusing that I'm Evan and you're Alex. I see that a lot too.
This is a niche comparison for people.
Yeah.
But Jared Stidham is kind of like Alex Moran right now. He's the backup, and he's finding I
didn't watch that show, and I thought of that comparison the other day.
Early season Alex Moran. But remember, once Alex Moran gets a taste of what it's like to be the starter, he totally flips and he gets super competitive. But
yeah,
he needs that kick in the ass right now, because right now he's like season 1 Alex Moran.
Oh yeah, he's totally
the Patriots need him to be season 3 Alex Moran. I did see a question in there because we've done a ton of quarterback talk about Gilmore.
I want to switch over as well.
So here, I came up with a stake about Gilmore the other day, and we talked about it a little bit off the air, but I'm ready to put it out there. So I look at one of the best trades in the NFL last year, right, was the Stephon Diggs trade. Not just for the Bills, because Minnesota gets that first-round pick back. They get Justin Jefferson, so they stay talented at the position, but now they have more team control under contract and much cheaper.
Yeah.
So I look at what's going on with Gilmore. He's 30 years old. He's going to need a new deal, all of that. I wonder if the move with Gilmore, because I've seen people say flip him for a quarterback. Somebody said flip him for Odell, which isn't the worst idea, assuming you get a quarterback. What about trading Gilmore? Let's say the Cowboys bring back Dak Prescott, and you've talked about this. Then if they bring back Dak Prescott and they're competing, Gilmore's a perfect fit. What if you trade Gilmore for the 10th overall pick? And there's 3 good corners in this draft, like at the very top. There's Surtain Jr., Fairley, the kid from Virginia Tech, who was originally recruited as a quarterback. So that's interesting. And I have another point on that. I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to get sidetracked. So Surtain, Fairley, and J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, who's probably the most realistic guy at 10. I think the other two are off the board at that point. So you flip Gilmore to the Cowboys for 10, and you draft J.C. Horn. You stay talented at cornerback, happens to be the same school. And he's that kind of corner they like too, Horn, right? He's that big physical corner. Yeah. But you buy years on the contract and you open up a ton of cap space. So that I don't know what you think of that. That's kind of what I would like to see them do now if they can't figure it out with Gilmore. I think that I love that Diggs trade. I love it for both teams. And I think that there's a model there. And I think that they are in a position to use that model as it comes to Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because I was actually going to write about this weekend because I feel like we're so caught up in the quarterback talk that we're forgetting just how real this Stephon Gilmore trade stuff was during the regular season and even in training camp. Remember, they had to pay him a bonus, basically, an advance really on his salary for 2019 or 2020, excuse me, just to get him to come back to camp and participate in the season, right? And then we get to the trade deadline and Stephon Gilmore put his house on the market. And there's a lot of rumors he was in trade talks during the draft the last season, and then it kind of died down, and then in terms of trade deadline, it kind of picked back up again. We kind of are forgetting, I think, in a lot of ways, that this was a very real possibility that they were going to trade Stephon Gilmore, and I think that that's the chip that they probably should use. As a rebuilding team, you have to sell something, right? You got to sell some sort of part to get something back for it. That's a long-term investment when you don't have a chip that you're necessarily going to see be on the next great Patriots team. That's the question. Yeah. Is Stephon Gilmore at 30 years old, heading into 31 years old, on the next great Patriots team? I don't know.
I see some people saying that you can't get a first for Gilmore. I like maybe the 10th overall pick, that's an expensive pick. Like maybe not straight up concerning the team has to pay him, but like the first, the Brady comp pick, which was a third rounder, and like maybe you throw in a pick next year. Like I'm not saying 1 for 1, but I think there's a package there where you can get that trade done and not, overly thin yourself out. I think that that's a totally doable. It probably couldn't be done 1 for 1. I don't think it could, but again, that Brady comp pick, absolutely getting traded, 100% getting traded. They will not make that pick. They won't pick with the picks they acquire for it. Those are going to get traded. It's going to be a massive trade. And then you move some later picks too. They're going to get comp picks next year for Joe Thuney. They might get a comp pick if he leaves for James White. Will probably be in the comp pick formula. Damiere Byrd might even end up in the comp pick formula. They're going to pick up comp picks next year. So I like that concept of trade Gilmore, get a high pick, draft a corner, and reset the clock at that position in terms of the contract.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think that it would surprise me if the Patriots if they put Stephon Gilmore up for sale. I expect them to get a top 50 pick at the very least for Stephon Gilmore. And I think they could get a late first for him. It's not the position it's not 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where 30 was this like huge drop off age for players at those positions, right? This is a new day and age. There's new training methods. There's new dietary methods. There's new ways to take care of your body. Guys are going to start playing well into their 30s at a high level, and guys are continuing to do that across the league. So I think Stephon Gilmore has 3 or 4 years at a pretty good to not maybe even great level of cornerback play that somebody that wants to upgrade their secondary is going to go ahead and make that move. The question is do the Patriots want to trade Stephon Gilmore in the AFC, or are they really only limiting to NFC teams? Regardless of that, though, Dallas at number 10 has always been sort of the spot I looked at. I think that number 10 is too much for Gilmore. I don't think Dallas is giving you 10 for Gilmore straight up.
But again, I think there's a package that makes that doable.
There's a package that makes sense. Maybe the Patriots trade, Gilmore plus a third round comp pick, 96 Brady pick or whatever, and get rid of it and trade it. And they have 10 and 15 in next year's draft or in this coming up draft in April, right? Or something like that. And the other thing is that I was going to write about too was the two guys that you mentioned. I'm not as high on J.C. Horn, and we can talk about why in a second, but Farley and Surtain are day one starter cornerbacks. Now, maybe
but
both
like, they're not going to be on the board where the Patriots
maybe not, but there's going to be 4 quarterbacks taken, right? There's going to be a couple of skill players taken. You got Penny Sewell in there. You never know, right? You could get to a point where you're sitting there in 8, 9, 10, and one of those guys is still available. Farley is the far more explosive, twitchy, freakish type of athlete. Surtain is the son of an NFL player, right? He is technically proficient, efficient, sound, great footwork, great technique at the line of scrimmage and press man coverage. If you could create a cornerback in a lab, 6'2", plenty of speed, it's Patrick Surtain, right? And he understands the game extremely well. So I think that's a really nice pick, that they could trade Gilmore for whatever they get for him, draft Patrick Surtain in the first round, and I'm not going to say they wouldn't miss a beat because Gilmore is better than that, but they would have a guy that they could plug and play right away into that spot with a guy like Patrick Surtain.
Again, that frees up like how much money too to go help the rest of the.
And that's the other thing too, is that's such a great point, is the contract value, right? Of having a young cornerback of that caliber on a rookie contract is definitely something that I think that they should be looking at. And this is assuming, I think we're both assuming that they've addressed the needs on the offensive side of the ball in a different way, right? So if they trade for a quarterback, or if they sign a free agent quarterback, or receivers and tight ends and that stuff too, we're on draft night, and quarterback and number 1 wide receiver are already taken care of through free agency, that's when we start to get into the conversation about corners and trading Gilmore and stuff like that. I think that's a really good point as well. A couple more questions that I saw. We're not getting a ton of questions about non-quarterbacks, but I'll try to find a few of them.
So I have an idea too to get more. We can answer this, but I have an idea to get more questions too if you want.
Okay, so J.C. Jackson, what's his extension look like? Because I know what I would do if I were the Patriots. That would be to offer J.C. Jackson a similar deal to what Malcolm Butler actually got with the Tennessee Titans, somewhere around $10.5 million a year, and say, you could sign this deal now with $20 million in guaranteed money that's going right into your pocket, or you can bet on yourself, come back on the 1-year tender, and hit unrestricted free agency next offseason.
Yeah, so I look at Jackson's situation. You mentioned Butler. I actually think it's very similar to where Malcolm Butler was when he was a restricted free agent in New England. And that was, remember, they had come off Talib, and then really it was Revis, right? Yeah. And he was playing opposite. Browner was there too, but he's playing opposite Revis. Browner is, I guess, in this scenario, Jason McCourty.
Right.
And Malcolm Butler was a number, like, you knew he had what it takes, or it looked like he had what it took to be a number 1 corner, but he wasn't a number 1. Like, to use a baseball analogy, he was a number 1 starter, but he wasn't an ace, right? Yeah. He was never going to be your ace. So the Patriots basically they used the team control. They strung Malcolm Butler along until they had a chance to get an ace. And Stephon Gilmore was and turned out to be that ace, right? And they paid him like an ace. So is J.C. Jackson a number 1 corner? Yeah, I think so. Is he an ace? I'm not ready to go there quite yet. So I think, and I don't have it in front of me, I don't know what the schedule is for free agent cornerbacks becoming free agents, and those guys sign extensions all the time. But I would look at, there isn't one this year. So I would look at the Patriots to kind of string J.C. Jackson along as much as they can until they can go out and sign an ace, whoever that next Stephon Gilmore is, whether it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think based on the years, like Jair Alexander, although I don't think there's a shot in hell the Packers let him go.
That's another thing about the cornerback position, is those types of guys seldom come available on the free agent market, right? You know, if you have a Jair Alexander, you have a Marshawn Lattimore, you're locking those guys down before they hit the market.
Right, but they sometimes do. Gilmore did, and part of it was he underperformed a little bit in Buffalo. So I think they string Jackson along as much as they can until that guy becomes available. So that's how I think they handle it, just because that's how they were in a very similar spot, and that's how they handled it last time. So
yeah, that's what I would look at with J.C. Jackson, is that, okay, you know, that you can get that immediate payday right now. Sure, you might be able to make more money in a year if you bet on yourself. You have another good interception season, but we also are going to trade Stephon Gilmore, JC, and you're going to be out there on an island against a lot of really good receivers, and it didn't go so well this season for you when Stephon Gilmore wasn't in the lineup, right? So I think that's the sort of the argument that you make to him is, look, you can bet on yourself and say you're going to keep getting better and you're going to make more money next offseason. But if we put you out there in week 1 and you're going up against Stephon Diggs and he does to you what he did to you last year towards the end of the season, are you going to make that money that you think you're going to make, or do you want to take the guaranteed money up front and get in front of it? That it's a good question. JC Jackson, his agent is going to tell you, bet on yourself, right? You're a good player. Go out there and perform, and we'll get you even more money next year. That's what the agent's going to say. But I think if you're JC Jackson as an undrafted guy, you really do have to look at taking the security of the here and the now, right? And recognize that could go away real quick.
Right. To go back to what I just said, like, they were fine giving Butler a long-term deal as long as he took what the team wanted. He wouldn't. That's why they strung him along. I think they offer Jackson something they're more comfortable with long-term. If he doesn't take it, then they string it out. Just for the record, 2023. So assuming 2021 season, the restricted free agent JC Jackson stays, and then they tag him the next year. Then 2023, if you're looking to land that big fish and replace him, you tell me if any of these guys are aces. Byron Murphy is scheduled to be a free agent. We don't know if it'll happen, but it's scheduled. Denzel Ward, I'm going in no particular order. Denzel
Ward's interesting.
He's an ace. Jair Alexander, we talked about as an ace.
Yeah.
Sean Murphy Bunting, because they're going to have to choose.
But he's more of a slot guy, though.
He is. They're going to have to choose between him and Carlton Davis. Trayvon Mullen's a free agent that year. Rock Ya-Sin, again, has been good, but I don't think he's an ace. I think those are all the names. Yeah, now I'm getting into guys who are going to be in their 30s. Marcus Peters will be a free agent. Malcolm Butler, ironically, will be a free agent. But so there's a couple potential aces in that class. Again, do they get cut loose? Who knows? But there are guys coming up that year.
Yeah, no, I do like the Denzel Ward because that's a lot like Stephon Gilmore, right? Where that's a top 10 pick. I think he was 4 overall in that draft.
And look, maybe they pay Baker. Maybe they pay Baker a ton of money and they can't afford it.
Right. So I think that's an interesting one. All right, I want to talk about a big offensive line.
You want to do? I was good. I saw that. I knew you were going to want to do Orlando.
Brown. I want to do this one. So Orlando Brown is he wants to play left tackle. Right. They want him to move over to the right side because they have Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, who's a stud. They want to have 2 bookend tackles, but Orlando Brown doesn't want to play the right side. He wants to play on the left side. The Patriots have Isaiah Wynn. We know the story with Isaiah Wynn. I'm not sure how much I'm actually giving up for Orlando Brown, but if you're talking about Orlando Brown in that Trent Brown role, I know they have the same last name. That's just a pure coincidence. If you're talking about him in that Trent Brown role of, this is a stable guy that's been in the league that maybe has some upside, that if Isaiah Wynn gets hurt, or if you don't like what you're seeing out of Isaiah Wynn, maybe this is another option for you to go to. I don't hate the idea. And I also know that he has some weight issues. He has some speed and foot speed issues. The Patriots love to take on those types of guys because they are definitely going to throw him on the hill and make sure that he's in good shape when the time comes. I don't mind the idea of flipping a pick for Orlando Brown, knowing that he has starter upside either on the left or right side. Now, granted, if he comes here, he wants to play the left side. So we should put that out there.
But I think it's possible at that point that you could, do you need Isaiah Wynn at that point? Because you could probably flip Isaiah Wynn to a team, because Isaiah Wynn's never really been the mold of tackle the Patriots are looking for. We've talked about this whole time how he's a little bit out of character, out of place here in New England. So do you then flip, and you're not going to get back for Isaiah Wynn what you gave up for Orlando Brown, but you can kind of close the gap there a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think that you need to start having a serious conversation with yourself about Isaiah Wynn's future with the Patriots. And
the 5th-year option is that's this spring,
this year. Yeah. And they have to make that decision. I don't think they're going to pick it up. It is a decent number, if I remember correctly, that it's not a huge overpay if they do want to pick it up, because he was towards the end of the first round, and it's not going to be something exorbitant, I don't think, if I remember correctly. But he can't stay on the field, right? And if he can't stay on the field, I don't care. He looks great when he's out there. He definitely can play the position when he's out there, but he can't stay on the field. I do wonder, and I don't think a move inside to guard makes any sense for Isaiah Wynn. I think that that's one of the more over talked about points, because his issue, I think, is that these NFL rushers, the power and the amount of pop that they come at when they come at him is injuring him. I really do believe that. His very first injury when he tore his Achilles was a bull rush by he was playing right tackle. He got bull rushed. He tried to plant and anchor his feet, and his Achilles snapped, right? I think his size is a concern. He's not an NFL offensive lineman from a size perspective at guard or at tackle. He just fits it a little bit better at guard because the guards are not as long and tall and stuff like that as tackles. But he's really not a guard. He's not a tackle. He's just really talented and has really good feet. And I don't know. I think at some point you definitely have to have a serious look in the mirror of, is this really the guy? Is this really who we want to have here at left tackle moving forward?
And you covered that pretty fully, so I'll just add this. I think between Wynn and Sony Michel, too, fifth-year options are going to be interesting this spring. And I think they're going to tell us a lot about kind of what they want to do with the offense long-term. So, I don't know. You covered it pretty fully. Do you want to – because people keep asking about the two Tampa guys, about Barrett and Godwin. So I hope you want to get to that.
I think it's funny because Bruce Arians looked at Chris Godwin in the eyes at the parade yesterday and said, "You're not going anywhere."
He's not. Brady's going to get all those guys to take pay cuts. I think Godwin's out the window. Now, you're still going to have to pay him like a good amount of money.
Yeah.
So that's where I wonder.
I think they might franchise tag him, honestly.
That's possible too, but even if you do that, I think the resources are going to keeping that offense around Tom Brady. I think that they're going to take some hits on defense to keep that offense around Brady. So Shaq Barrett, I think, is the real possibility between those two.
Yeah, so Shaq Barrett's an interesting player. I think that he's more of your 4-3 rush end than he is like a 3-4 set the edge outside type of linebacker. If you're going to bring him into this system, then you have to let him go after the quarterback, right? You're not going to in here and say, Jack, we're just gonna have you sit up in a gap and plug a hole, right? That's not why you pay Shaq Barrett. You pay Shaq Barrett to get after the QB, and he's really good at that. And he's really good at it in scheme situations too. And I think that's sometimes we look at that as a bad thing, right? Is that okay, yeah, it takes a stunt or it takes a cleanup sack to get him on the stat sheet or something like that. But you do need that guy, right? You need that guy that finishes the play. And Shaq Barrett is definitely one of those people that does that. Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, JPP, those guys created a lot of havoc, and Shaq Barrett got a lot of really favorable opportunities to get after the QB, and I guarantee you that he would be able to do the same thing here in New England with this scheme. So I would really like that if they were going to use him properly. If they're going to ask Shaq Barrett to set the edge and sit in a gap and contain rush on the outside and push the pocket and all that, no. It's similar to the Chase Winovich conversation, right? If you're going to have that type of guy on the roster, you have to let him get after the quarterback. You just can't do it any other way. A lot of people asking about Odell, Alex. We've done the Odell conversation so many times, but
who's the quarterback? What's the cost? Can you get him for a third round pick? And you have Mac Jones throwing him the football? Sure. If Jared Stidham's your starting quarterback and you have to give up a first, no, he's a good player. You always want good players. It's a talent driven league. All right. But it's also the old belt, and maybe this doesn't apply anymore. I don't know, but it did when they first won, when the first dynasty, and they need to kind of get back to that mindset. It's not about collecting talent. It's about building a team. Are you bringing in Odell to fit a role? Are you bringing him in as a piece to complete the puzzle? Are you bringing him in because he fills a role on the team? Or are you just bringing him in because he's Odell Beckham and yay, he made a cool catch once? What's the context there? I'm not saying that. No, but my point is, I'm not saying that I don't want Odell. I'm saying that if you're just getting him to add a name, it's one step forward for two steps back. If there's an actual role for him, and again, if Stidham's your quarterback, and he doesn't know what he's doing out there. If Cam's your quarterback and he can't hit the throws that you need to hit to make Odell effective, then no, I don't want him because you're just throwing good money after bad at that point. If you have a quarterback who's going to be able to operate a sustainable passing offense, which the Patriots did not have last year, right? But if you have a quarterback who can operate a sustainable passing offense and you need a true number one wide receiver, then yeah, go get him. He makes all the sense in the world. But you're not the Patriots can't just go get talent to get talent anymore. You can't do that without Tom Brady. He's going to cost you. And if you don't have all the other pieces in place, you can't be giving up the assets you need to complete the rest of the roster to just bring back the 2020 Patriots plus Odell Beckham. That doesn't do you any good.
Right. I agree with that. Now there's three things I'll say about Odell. First of all, the best path to get Odell, if that's what you want, if you're a Patriots fan and you're saying, I want Odell Beckham, is to sign his best friend Cam Newton to come back here, right? Because I don't think Odell is going to come and play here with another quarterback, right? Odell,
He might.
I don't think so because
If he's traded, what does it matter?
Because Odell wants his own situation, and I don't think he has had some issues with Baker Mayfield. Point blank, he's had some issues, and
I don't think you could have two more opposite, both in terms of the personality and the style of play. You're not going to find two more opposite quarterbacks than Baker Mayfield and Mac Jones as a hypothetical.
Right, but the reason why he didn't like Baker Mayfield or has had issues with Baker Mayfield is that Baker Mayfield's not there for the Odell show, and he's not there to feed Odell Beckham the ball. Right, he's there to distribute the football to the open man. Right, that's the type of offense that Baker knows is effective. That's the type of offense Baker wants to run. If they brought Odell here with Cam back, and I say with Cam back because I don't see Odell wanting to come here unless they just trade him here and he has no choice. If they bring Odell here with Cam, it's going to be Cam to Odell 175 times, right? Like Odell's going to get targeted 160
But don't you think if there's a rookie quarterback, whether it's Mac Jones or Trey Lance, that guy's going to lean heavily on Odell Beckham?
Sure.
Like, I don't think he wants to. I think veterans, he might get picky.
Yeah.
If there's a rookie quarterback, look at like what Keenan Allen did last year with Justin Herbert,
Sure.
right? He led the league in targets. I think you kind of pitch Odell that sort of situation, and you can get him to buy into it.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention about Odell is that right now his contract, his cash in 2021 is 15.5 or 15.75 million, right around there, which is very affordable for a number one receiver in today's market, right? Yep. Allen Robinson's going to be pushing over $20 million a year on the open market. So you're talking about a guy that you are getting from, if they want to look at it as a cost-effective sort of move, in terms of value, right? That is very good value for the player at that price tag. The third thing I want to mention is, my gosh, what a great fit Odell Beckham Jr. is in this offense, because he's the type of guy that you can move around the entire formation, right? He can run routes from inside. He can run routes from outside. You play Odell here at the Z receiver position that they have now, he is going to be fantastic in that role. So he's a great scheme fit. He's not overly pricey. The question is can you keep him happy? And that's the problem the Giants had. That's the problem the Browns had. Can you keep him satisfied? I don't know if you can unless you bring him in with his best buddy in Cam Newton. And I know people in the chat are saying that he's wanted to play with Brady in the past. That's definitely true. But Cam and Odell go way, way back. Those two are really, really close. And that's really the only way I could see it, because, man, he would be a great fit here.
But again, I still think you can sell him on a rookie. I think you can point to what happened last year with the Chargers and sell him on that. I agree with you. Like, he's not coming here to play with Garoppolo. He's not coming here to play with Carr. He's not coming here to play with Mariota. Like, yeah, then you're going to have a problem. I think he can sell him on the rookie. I do. Because then also he gets to be the guy, right? He's Odell Beckham, but at the end of the day, if Cam Newton's here, it's the Cam Newton show. Nobody's looking twice at Mac Jones, okay, if Odell Beckham's here. Even Trey Lance, North Dakota State. Odell's the guy, and I think you can sell him on that too. And it's like, dude, you can get out of Cleveland, man. It's Cleveland. Yeah. Come to Boston. And I know people are down on Boston recently, but it's not Cleveland.
Cleveland is bad. Odell is good. Maybe they can get their hands on Odell. We're pushing over an hour here, Alex. We really appreciate everybody that's asked all these questions. I feel like we've covered a lot of bases, although I would have liked to get to more questions that weren't quarterback related. So
that's good. And I'm thinking the same thing, because I feel like we're doing this every week. But it's like, this is it. This is, you don't, and here's where I am glad.
Yes.
Fans are recognizing you can't win without a quarterback. And that quarterback it's not a need, it's the need. Yeah. The other needs they're important, but they're not relevant until that one need is figured out.
They're secondary needs. The top need is quarterback. The rest of the needs are kind of the rest of the needs, right? And one needs the domino effect of one following the other is very, very key. I think it's going to be really a fascinating offseason still. I don't know if it's going to be I know all the rumors are out there. I know Reese and Curran. I trust those guys too. But this over-aggressiveness it's going to have to come out of nowhere because I don't know if they have the sort of appeal to have this kind of huge offseason where they bring in all these big names, right?
They don't have that appeal, but they're going to have more cap space than just about anybody. Money talk.
That's what they're going to have to do. So for the first time in Bill Belichick's career, maybe for the first time in his career with the Patriots, at least, he's going to have to overpay somebody.
And this goes back to what we talked about,
here, right? That's when it starts. The dam starts to open. Once you get one to come here, right? Then it starts to get more interesting for everybody else. I will say that.
And it goes back to, I guess we'll close with what we started with. The expectation right now, and the reports from the reliable people are out there that they are going to get overly and uncharacteristically aggressive.
Yeah,
that means overpay. That means overpaying people. That means, look, I know you need to save cap space to maneuver during the regular season. I get that. They're going to have $60 million. They projected about $60 million right now. That goes up to what, about 75 if they trade Gilmore?
Yep.
Right. If I have that number right, they should go into training camp with like 7 or 8 million in cap space at most. That's where they need to be. They can't meander and this and that. And look, I thought it was a good strategy in the past. I didn't hate it as much. You wait until day 2, you get the bargain, guys, but you had Tom Brady. So you could do that. You don't have him anymore. They got to be day 1 spenders, overpaying, aggressive. Like, that's what it has to be.
They need to be what they were when we woke up that morning and Stephon Gilmore signed here with the Patriots, and everybody was like, what, Stephon Gilmore signed with the Patriots?
Look what happened last time they overpaid somebody. It turned out okay. So
that's what they got to do. And everybody at the time thought that was an overpay, but they were paying to project what they thought they could turn the player into in the scheme. So that's the guy that I'm sort of looking for now. I've thrown Corey Davis out there at times. I'm looking for that sort of guy. Like, who's the guy that they are going to say, in our system, 3 or 4 years into this, we're going to be looking back and like, this contract was fantastic, right? Like the Gilmore deal. Who's that guy? Because maybe they can go to that second tier. Like, Allen Robinson's going to get the bag, right? Every team is going to line up to sign Allen Robinson. He's not going to have any problems breaking the bank. But maybe that next wave, that Corey Davis, I mentioned Will Fuller in the past, but now it sounds like the Texans might franchise tag him. There's so many free agent wide receivers out there, so just take your pick, right? One of those guys, they just need, the morning that the legal tampering period begins, they just need to go out and they need to say, here's $16 million. That's $4 million more than anybody else is going to pay you. Sign on the dotted line right now. Let's do this, right? That's what they're going to have to do. And I don't think it's that unbelievable to think that they will do that, because the last time we were in this position with Stephon Gilmore, they had that kind of cap space. They had that available option to them. And that's exactly what they did. They went out there and they said, Stephon Gilmore, here's the bag, right? And you're not going to get this bag from anybody else, or no one's going to pay you more than this. So here's the bag. And it ended up working out really beautifully for them. So look at that free agent. Is it, I mentioned Davis, maybe it's Juju, maybe it's Kenny Golladay. I don't know. You know, there's so many guys out there. Who knows? But that's the guy that they're going to have to look for. That's the guy that I'm waiting to hear March 17th. Legal tampering periods. I'm waiting for that Schefter tweet. The Patriots just broke the bank to sign, Allen, whoever it is, right? And that's going to be the difference. Alex and I are going to be back on the Tuesday show on Tuesday. We'll do another Q&A on Thursday like we did this week as well. So you can come back and you can ask all of your questions. You can tell us how dumb we are for comparing Mac Jones to Tua Tagovailoa. Do whatever you want, and then we will answer more of these questions. Maybe next week we're going to try really, really hard to answer some questions that
I really want to do like non-quarterback draft talk, even if it's just rapid fire, like people naming prospects. Like that, I want to try to get into that at some point.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get into that more next week. But thank you very much. This has been an awesome hour here. We held strong there for a long time. So we thank you for watching on YouTube, on Twitter, Periscope, wherever you're watching. And we will be back same time, same place next week for another Q&A. So bring your questions then. So thank you for watching, guys.